We also need to look at the BASA fund. Okay. That's the Bilateral Air Service Agreement Fund, where 7.5 billion has been reported to have been invested in the ongoing restructuring at the airports. But what the critics are saying now is that the minister did not go through the proper channel in accessing the fund.
And that's an interesting point. I think if that is the case, obviously this debate should go on and should certainly be more robust. But and as a media person, you would understand this. I would want the debate to, I couldn't contribute to that until I know one way or the other what it is. So if the question is, was a proper process followed, I'd want to know what that process is. Okay, and then once I know what the process is, I'd want to identify at what point the ball dropped, so that we can focus on that. What the government
party is saying is that they got a kind of concession from the Bureau of Public Procurement.
Okay.
So would that suffice for not going through the National Assembly for proper appropriation?
Is the argument, though, that they didn't go through the National Assembly?
That's what the critics are saying.
Well, I'd like to know that for a fact, that they didn't go through. I think it's a very difficult thing to spend such a significant amount of money without going through the National Assembly.
We have a particular track. Perhaps it will set the agenda for the next couple of minutes on the same program. Let's just see what we have there on tape.
Statistics available show that the frequency of international aircraft movement increased by 12.8% from January to June this year. Today, the Nigerian airspace is not what we say it is. There will be no Continental, there will be no Delta, Arik will not go, Etihad will not come, Emirates will not come, and British Airways will not ask for more frequencies. Lufthansa is asking for. In fact, we're even the ones being restrictive with it, because we keep playing the role that our local airlines should grow and match the corresponding bilateral air services agreement. Revenue from overflyers, as a matter of fact, increased by 5%, resulting in 8% passenger movement over the Nigerian airspace.
All of this increase is what people have been talking about, but from what Benga was trying to ask then, we're not looking at the BASA, so to speak. Now, people have been asking about funding, for instance, in the industry. Perhaps maybe you should expatiate more if the industry is being revamped and we're getting to see some of these developments in some of the airports, as you rightly said. The airports built in the 70s and some of them in the 80s, truly they need all the latest of equipment, which will also put some kind of faith in the minds of air travelers and say we have the best of equipment here in our airports. What do you think the aviation ministry at this point in time should be doing, apart from what we have seen in structures, which the buildings are being expanded? What else can they do for the people, for the average Nigerian to say, I think, well, I have much faith and hope in flying again?
Well, I think that there's already some level of focus, but for me, I come from the consumer standpoint. I think my position is that people should get true value for their money. What the ministry should continue to do is ensure that the flying experience is what the cost to people. International travel originating from Nigeria is extremely expensive. There's absolutely no reason why Nigerians who engage in international travel should not enjoy a service that is commensurate to the cost.
Again, sorry, you're a lawyer. Allow me button here. I remember when that particular issue came up then, and it went back and forth to the extent that the National Assembly had to wade in to all of this, looking at the difference, the differences in air tickets, fee or charges. What's your take on that? Has it been resolved?
It certainly hasn't been resolved. What I know is that both committees of the House and the Senate have conducted different investigations. I believe their reports are being awaited. Having represented the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority at the investigations, I know that repeatedly the Senate committee chairman repeatedly expressed his outrage at what he considered was an unjustifiable disparity between the cost of flying between Nigeria and other locations and similarly situated locations such as Nigeria. I expect that that report is going to some extent, maybe underscore that outrage. And it's going to go back to the ministry. The ministry is going to have to, either through directly or through one of the relevant agencies, take certain actions. I've heard people say that this summer the fares have been somewhat reduced. I'm not going to say one way or the other if that is the case. I haven't conducted that survey.
Because that's strange in summer.
Yeah, exactly. That's strange in summer. But previously, I participated in the investigation, so I could tell what the real disparities were. So until I can look at the numbers again and compare it like we did before arriving at those conclusions, I probably would want to hold out on a verdict.
Now, what's your take on the trip the Ministry of Aviation is about to take to solicit for investors?
Good question. I think the biggest thing any society can do to attract investors primarily would be the business climate in that environment. More than anything else, that's the most important thing. However, how do people become aware of that business climate? It's going to be about how that environment operates. Investment money is always looking for locations, and there's not that much of it across the world. But beyond that is, I've studied how business emerges and is done in Africa generally, and I see that we really have to showcase ourselves to some extent. And it's not new. It's all over the world. Those showcases occur. There's always a U.S. trade mission in some part of Africa, in Nigeria, several times a year. So if what this is to really engage potential investors, I can't see how it's not something that we should do. And something else that makes that important is that, unfortunately, and you would know, the international media reporting about Africa or Nigeria right now, it's relatively negative. And as such, you probably need to go out there to speak with people so that they can understand that there's a totally different aspect of the environment. So to some extent, I mean, I can't see how you will not have to go out and disabuse people's mind. What is worse is that recently I've been reading in the media about some big international companies doing business here who repeatedly criticize the environment, say that it's difficult to do business there, you can't do business there, but they have remained and are doing business here.
I think the point is, many, even from the presidency, when she wrote the proposal to embark on this aviation roadshow, many don't seem convinced that a roadshow would sufficiently attract investors in Nigeria.
I think a roadshow alone will certainly not attract investors. But I think a carefully and well-executed roadshow certainly contributes. I mean, because what it is that it puts the policymakers right there in the front of the potential investors. It takes several steps of questions away, several back and forths away. What are you, and you're able to negotiate with a serious-minded investor who you can have a conversation right then and then, agree on what concessions will be granted, and because you are the policymakers and the operators in that industry, the investors can take that and say, well, based on this word, I'm more than happy to come into that environment. That's a totally different thing from studying what the business environment is and then trying to figure out how to go in there to do your business.